Elliot Friedman today on 32 Thoughts was talking about Hellebuyck, and he had said that by this time next year, he expects Hellebuyck to most likely be the highest paid goaltender in the National Hockey League. Now, I guess there's a possibility that it's not in Winnipeg because, they could trade him in the offseason. But considering that the Jets have him for one more year, he's going to be coming off another incredible season. He will, like the Jets, I firmly believe the Jets are going to get, I've been saying all year long, Connor Hellebuyck's next deal is going to be like a Carey Price deal. It's going to be 8 figures a year. It's going to start with a 10, and it will probably be 7 or 8 years. If that's on the table from the Winnipeg Jets this summer, how does he not take it?
You're asking me a reason why an American-born player who took issue and umbrance of having a vaccination here and seems to have and has a young family would want a young family would want to live in the U.S.
Well, okay, put it that, but I didn't say that. I say, how do you turn down that
somewhere else?
Well, I guess if you go and have another great season, but and I mean,
you're saying if he doesn't have another great season, he's not going to get that money. The Jets are the only one who are going to be like in 1 year. His stock's going to plummet if he doesn't have a great season next year.
Think about the risk. Think about the risk involved in saying no. Ask John Klingberg how that worked. And I know it's a different situation, but Klingberg, he got a little greedy. They offered him 8 years at $8 million. He ended up signing 1 year for $7 million, and then just got traded for a fourth rounder. I'm just saying, if you're his agent, what are you telling him?
Well, I'm not comparing him to
money.
John Klingberg, that's for sure. An offensive D-man.
I'm just saying, a guy that was going into his contract season had a lifetime set for life contract on the table and said no, wanted more, and now it's just a cautionary tale on not taking the money when it's available.
Oh, I think but I don't think. I mean, so you think he's going to be scared into taking a long-term deal?
I just think that if the Jets put forth a contract that he has earned, that pays him and makes him the highest paid goaltender in the National Hockey League, I think it'd be very hard to walk away from it.
Yeah, possibly. And I mean, maybe he does.
And to me, he's the most important one. If Hellebuyck's here, I think the Jets are contending. Maybe not for the Stanley Cup, but I think they're a playoff team. And again, if that's the case, maybe you are trading Dubois, you're trading Scheifele, you're getting some young players in. You've got that cornerstone piece of your team that gives you a chance to win every single night. That's why, to me, the priority is Hellebuyck and then everything else. Because this story is very, put it this way, your doomsday scenario that you dropped of not contending for 5 years probably is very realistic if he's not around.
So So what do you think the team's going to look like if you're saying that Mark Scheifele and Pierre-Luc Dubois are gone? Who's coming in to suggest to Connor Hellebuyck that this team, without you think he likes getting shelled in every night in net? You think that's them losing their top 2 centermen is somehow going to convince him that money's the most important thing here, and that
these guys aren't walking away for nothing. These guys aren't walking away for nothing. I mean, ask me.
Well, that's what I mean.
Who they're getting back in trades.
Come in? Do you think future picks come in? We're playing hypotheticals.
Players.
What would be a situation besides money? Because I don't think money is going to be enough. Describe a situation that Connor Hellebuyck is going to want to commit 8 years to Winnipeg.
Hey, listen, he's been in that dressing room for a long time. I'm not sure that if he thinks that he's a leader and is comfortable being here and believes that this team can do things, might not think that some changes of some of the top personnel might not be a good thing. I mean,
that's sure. Okay, say that's true then, but you still need players coming in to.
Here's the thing, though. I think that conversation with him happens before that. To me, he's the number one priority. Would love to hear people's thoughts in the chat as well on this.
Who? I missed the last part.
I just said, I mean, to me, those conversations, once we get to the offseason, regardless of what happens this year, the first thing on the long to-do list of Kevin Cheveldayoff is see what the story is with Connor Hellebuyck and whether you can get him signed.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't Dubois. We've heard
number one priority. The issue is if you can lock down your number one priority and whether or not he'd want to commit 8 years, regardless of it being max money or the highest paid goaltender, to commit to Winnipeg. He's going to want to see some. He's put in his time here. He's been here for for 8 years, whatever it is now. Like, you know, he's going to finish his contract here probably. Well, probably not unless they can re-sign him. But I mean, I'm just saying, what do you like you need to convince him to want to be here and being like, hey, man, we're going to be a contender because you're in our net is not a selling point to a goalie. Like, it's a selling point to players. Be like, hey, we got Connor Hellebuyck in net. We're going to be contenders. Telling the goalie that, hey, so long as we can rely on you, like we've relied on you your entire career here.
I'm pretty sure that's not the pitch, Jeff.
Well, of course it's not. That's what I'm saying. Of course that's not the pitch. But you're not answering my question. What would have to be an ideal situation for him without convincing him? When I asked you that, you said, well, they're going to be a contender so long as he's in the net. Well, what does
listen, I don't think this team is garbage outside of Connor Hellebuyck. I mean, listen, we've seen them do good things before. We'll see what happens this year. I think they've got a lot of young talent coming in. I mean, the NHL is somewhat cyclical, but a player like Hellebuyck is a guy that you build your team around. And I think before, that hasn't really been the case. I mean, there's a lot of things. And I mean, I don't know him well enough. He seems to be one of the more interesting dudes that I've come across before. But like, I don't get the inkling at all that there's something elsewhere that Winnipeg just can't compete with. I mean, to me, I think that he needs to be rewarded as the franchise player that he is. And believe me, he is the franchise player here in Winnipeg. I don't think you're going to disagree with me on that.
Absolutely not. He's the most important player on this team by far.
For sure. So, like, I don't see anything that would prevent the Jets from giving him that king contract that you get once in an entire year. Not to mention the significant risk that goes with not taking that. I mean, to me, it's very different than all of those other players. And it is honestly the linchpin for what happens going forward. But, I mean, have we ever heard anything from Connor? Like, this is not a Pierre-Luc Dubois situation in my opinion at all. I mean, I think they've got a better chance of doing it with him than either of those other guys. And I'm not even sure it's close, partly because I think they'll be willing to do exactly what it's going to take. And that's probably making him the highest paid goaltender in the National Hockey League. And I don't know if there's a lot of people that would disagree with that. We had a great conversation with Mike Kelly about it a few weeks ago from NHL Network. And he was sort of, mentioning the risk of signing players to contracts in and around 30 years and goaltenders. And the end result was you can't afford not to. And that's why, I mean, like, I don't think that there's a huge sales job as far as like writing out the plan for the next 4 years. I think it's pretty simple. You see the way things that are going. There will be some changes. We've got some young players in, but this team will go as we go with you as our leader. Here's the check, and the rest is history.
Yeah, I know all that you said. I'm saying I think it's a no-brainer. I think what I'm suggesting is max deal, max term, max money is not going to be enough without more in there. And that more being, some kind of suggestion that this team's trending upwards. I don't think Connor Hellebuyck wants to go through a rebuild. Now, here's the interesting part in that is I don't think that the only way the Jets don't go into a rebuild and can retool is if they re-sign Connor Hellebuyck. That's the only. So
I agree.
So for him, it's not like you can give him more money. Like, I mean, I guess you can give him more money. Like, if you wanted to beat anybody else by a couple $1 million a year, yeah, you can be that. You could probably win it. I just don't think money is going to be enough. He makes a lot of money. He's going to make a lot of money no matter where he goes. And the comments I made about the COVID and US stuff, not about him being an anti-vaxxer. It's about Americans wanting to play in Canada, in the US. And this whole COVID has created a little bit of tension. Guys want to go back to the States. Trust me, I talked to a lot of them. COVID has changed their opinion of playing in Canada in a lot of respects. There's been articles written about it. This isn't some random thing I bring up.
2 years ago, for sure. Right now, he's got a young issue.
Sure, he's got a young child too.
Like, to me, the taxes are way more of an issue than anything to do with
there
COVID.
You go. There's taxes too, but I am just saying, to be like, this is our pitch. Like, we need to sign you so you can be our pitch to other players is not the pitch I think Connor Hellebuyck is looking for. I think he wants to have a core there. I think he wants to have a leadership group. I think he wants to be able to look into the future and know that this team is going to win, not in 3 years' time, not for the final couple years of his contract, not for the last half. Right now, he wants to win a Stanley Cup. He's won a Vezina. Okay, he's should probably have 2 Vezinas. He's done it. He's been an all-star. He's gonna go to the Olympics if they ever go back. He wants to win a Stanley Cup, and unless he knows he can win, unless he has the confidence that he can win a Stanley Cup here, I'm sorry, but I don't think money is going to matter at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's still a lot to play for this year, especially when it comes to that situation. I mean, if this weekend was a complete mirage and they ended up blowing out the rest of the season and missing the playoffs, I think that makes it a lot more challenging. But I mean, if this team does make the playoffs and regardless of what happens, plays well, maybe they lose in the first round. Let's say they get to the second round and lose to Colorado Avalanche. Just take that. I think you're looking at a team that has made strides from the last couple very disappointing years. I mean, where they missed the playoffs, where they were out right away.
You just gave them a second round berth. Like, what do you mean? Let's go back and say they lose in 5 games in the first. Then what happens? Let's just suggest to you that they're going to be in the second round. I don't know how you can add that.
No, I didn't say that they were going. I said, let's say, given this scenario, they go to the playoffs and they don't get out of the division, but they lose in the first or second round. I'm not sure it's a massive difference. Yeah, it depends on the series. I think that would be a trend. Losing in the first and second
round is a massive difference.
Okay, well,
especially if you're going to talk in the context of this team making strides towards doing things, losing in the first round again.
Well, they missed the playoffs last year. I mean, so if they make the playoffs and are competitive in it, that is a step forward from last year, right?
Sure.
Okay, so that is what I'm saying. If that is the scenario, and it could be better, it could be worse. But I mean, I don't see any. I would be shocked if that would be okay. Listen, I'm out of here and I'm not re-signing again. I mean, if he's treated well, he's paid what he's worth. I think it would be negligent on the agent not to get that done. Because, I mean, I think there are too many risks when it comes to injuries and those sort of things. When you're talking about a contract that's going to take you to the rest of the way. And I mean, listen, you don't think that if there was some concerns about where the team was going to be, that there wouldn't be, if I want out, if I want to get a trade in a few years, that could be talked about if they're not where they're at? Of course it could. But it's that security for the family and being paid. And don't think that he's not a competitive guy and wants to be the highest paid goaltender in the National Hockey League if he thinks he deserves it. I think that he has, and I certainly don't close the door on anything like that. And to be honest, I think considering how important it is to the Winnipeg Jets, if they can't get that done, it adds so many more issues to the club. And to be honest with you, looking at history, they haven't done a very poor job of when it comes to re-signing players. I know we can focus on Trouba, who wanted to trade, and obviously this Dubois situation. But other than that, in that room with guys that he's played his entire career, including himself with a pretty nice extension, they have been pretty successful with that, despite being in Winnipeg and despite all the naysayers saying that they weren't going to get it done with those players before.
I'm sorry. I guess to make one thing clear, I'm not closing the door on signing Connor Hellebuyck. I seem to have been playing devil's advocate to this particular. We've now found ourselves on two sides of the line. We both agree that Connor Hellebuyck is a top priority. If the Jets should be doing everything and anything they possibly can to sign him. I think they can sign him long term this summer. But I also think, to your last comment about, okay, well, what has this core done? Like, what do you mean? Like, I don't think this core has suggested that they're on the brink of anything special or have been. I mean, they got one run under their belt, so there isn't like this. I mean, this is what we've been talking about for weeks, if not months, if not years, is that, there's we're talking about, Mark Scheifele is going to sign this massive deal. And, Pierre-Luc Dubois is going to sign this massive deal. And, all these guys are.
By the way, I sure as hell haven't been saying that. I don't think that's happening with either of those guys here.
No, I'm just saying in general, like they weren't, not here or just anywhere. These guys are going to move on. This core is going to move on. They're going to sign elsewhere. They're going to sign big money. Well, okay, that's possible. And while each of them have had a lot of individual success, they haven't had a lot of team success. They haven't won anything. They went on one cool run in 2018. We talked about this last week, and they really haven't done anything. So you want to talk about improvements from last year? I don't think Connor Hellebuyck or any player in this core group that is looking at signing an extension, as looking at committing their future to this organization.
Let me ask you this, based on that, because I do hear that.
Let me finish. It's like from last year to this year's improvement, they're looking at the time they've been here throughout the entire process, and they haven't done much of anything.
Well, I mean, they've made it to the conference finals. I mean, how many teams outside of the Avalanche that won the Cup last year in the West have done anything? I mean...
What do you mean outside of the West?
No, in the West.
Like, these teams that make the playoffs continuously win rounds, there's not a ton of them, but they make moves and change. Like, you know, that's my point.
But like, there's no obvious teams. Like, I hear that all the time. Well, hey, this team hasn't done anything. I mean, compare them to their counterparts. And again, the Avalanche won last year. They're the champs. Oilers made it to the conference finals last year, which was great. They haven't done anything other than that. Does that count for something? I would imagine it does in Edmonton, and it certainly did. Listen, we're getting far removed from 2018, and we've seen sort of the downward trend of this club for the last few years. I just think that this is another reason why this final 15 games and what happens in the playoffs, I think, will completely create the narrative around the club, because halfway through the season, this team was in first place. Well, if you continue on that stretch, it's a great season. You've done a lot. The last couple months and a half hasn't been that way. But again, I guarantee you this is not the last time we will be having this topic, because outside of what's happening on the ice right now, going into the offseason, the future of 37 is here at the top of the list for podcast listeners, and everybody else comes after that. And I don't know, it'll be very interesting to see what happens, because I think we are on the same page that if Hellebuyck is not going to sign, they need to maximize the value for him. That means he's not there. And that means, to your point, you are talking about a far different rebuild than potentially moving a few players, still having an elite goaltender, and having a chance to win every night. Hammer, this has been awesome, as always. You bring the best out of me. I try to get it to you. But you did some good devil's advocating today to
yeah, I don't even know how we went down this. I don't even know where the line of questioning went. I might have mentioned one thing, and then we went in our, but I love debating you. I love
well, you said the next 5 years. You said the next 5 years they're rebuilding because all those guys are going, and it's not impossible.
It's not impossible.
It's definitely not impossible. But there's a lot of people that will take that narrative and say that, well, it's a done deal. This is the end of the road, and that's it. And I also think it's very possible that that he's back, and then they figure the rest out.